The microphone squealed as my parents adjusted it on the makeshift stage. Behind them, a projector flickered to life, displaying the truth about our daughter in bold letters across the screen. Military families filled the base auditorium, their children playing between folding chairs while officers stood along the walls, arms crossed. My mother's voice rang out clear and righteous. "We're here to expose a fraud." I stayed seated, steady. When they finished their opening salvo, I spoke just one word into the silence: Nightbird. The room went still. Then phones started buzzing, hundreds of them, all at once. My name is Ray Calloway, and I should have known the invitation was a trap the moment it arrived on Evergreen Family Foundation letterhead. The cream-colored envelope had appeared in my office mailbox at Arcadia Aeromedical 3 weeks ago, nestled between fuel invoices and maintenance schedules. My mother's handwriting, still perfect after all these years, spelled out my name with the kind of precision that made my teeth ache. Inside, an invitation to speak at Raven Ridge Army Airfield's Family Day about virtue and service in the modern military. They'd even included a glossy brochure featuring themselves Margot and Daniel Whitaker, conservative podcasters and founders of a charity that supposedly helped military families in need. I ran my thumb over their printed faces. My mother's platinum blonde hair hadn't moved an inch since I was 12. My father's salt and pepper beard was trimmed to televangelist perfection. They looked exactly like what they sold themselves as moral guardians of American values, defenders of truth in a world gone soft. The last line of the invitation made my blood run cold. "We're so excited to finally share your real story with everyone." My real story, as if they knew anything about it. I set the invitation aside and pulled up their podcast on my laptop. The Whitaker Truth Hour had gained serious traction lately, 200,000 downloads per episode, corporate sponsors, even a few celebrity guests. Their latest episode was titled "Stolen Valor: How Fake Heroes Destroy Real Sacrifice." "These people," my mother's voice purred through my headphones, "they put on uniforms they didn't earn, claim battles they never fought, steal glory from genuine warriors, and the worst part, sometimes these frauds are hiding right in our own families." My father chimed in with his trademark chuckle. "Speaking of family, we've got something special planned for next month's Family Day at Raven Ridge. Let's just say, some masks are about to come off." I closed the laptop. Through my office window, I could see our helicopters on the tarmac, civilian medical birds now, painted white with red crosses instead of army green. We'd flown 3 critical patients to trauma centers just that morning. Real work, real lives saved, but none of that would matter to them. They'd never forgiven me for leaving their show. See, before I was Ray Calloway, I was Rachel Whitaker, the middle child in their traveling Salvation Circus. Every Sunday, they'd dress us up and parade us on church stages across the South. My older brother David played violin. My younger sister Emma sang hymns. And I testified. Sweet little Rachel, telling crowds how God and my parents' guidance had saved me from whatever sin they'd scripted that week. The donations poured in. The Evergreen Family Foundation grew, and every dollar went straight into their ministry, or so the donors believed. I escaped at 18, straight into an Army recruiting office, changed my last name to my grandmother's maiden name, became a warrant officer, flew medevac helicopters in places I still can't fully discuss, earned my call sign Nightbird for flying night extractions under fire when nobody else would go up. But here's the thing about classified operations: you can't defend yourself with secrets. When I left the Army and started Arcadia Aeromedical, I had to stay quiet about most of my service. The NDA I'd signed, the operations still partially classified, the work I'd done with units that officially didn't exist, it all had to stay buried. My parents knew this. They'd tried to reconnect 2 years ago, right when my company landed its first Strategic Response Directorate contract. I'd refused to let them use my military service for their brand, so now, apparently, they'd decided to destroy it instead. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the area code, their neighborhood in Tennessee. The Guardian Patriots stand ready to expose all frauds in uniform. Your parents are brave truth tellers. Time's running out to come clean. Captain. Guardian Patriots. Of course, they'd aligned with that crowd, militant keyboard warriors who made it their mission to hunt down anyone they deemed insufficiently patriotic or authentic. If my parents fed them the narrative that I was fake, that mob would tear apart everything I'd built. I looked at the calendar. Family Day was in 5 days. They wanted a war in front of an audience, on a base where real warriors would judge every word. They thought my silence was weakness, that my NDAs were convenient shields for lies. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. Growing up as Rachel Whitaker meant living inside a carefully edited story. My parents didn't just raise children, they produced us like a television series, each episode crafted for maximum donor impact. I was 7 when they started the Evergreen Family Foundation. The pitch was simple, a wholesome military family spreading Christian values while supporting other service members in need. Never mind that my father had washed out of basic training after 2 weeks with shin splints, or that my mother's connection to the military extended no further than a grandfather who'd served in Korea. They wore flag pins, said the right words, and that was enough. Our house in Tennessee became a production studio. Every breakfast was filmed for their blog. Every homework session became a homeschool success story for their newsletter, despite us attending public school. They'd wake us at 5:30 a.m. to rehearse testimonies before school, making us repeat lines until our delivery felt authentic. "Rachel, sweetheart," my mother would say, adjusting my dress for the 100th time before a church performance. "Remember, you were lost in worldly books until Daddy and I showed you the true path. Make them feel your transformation." The worldly books, Nancy Drew mysteries I'd checked out from the library, but the real artistry came in post-production. They'd splice footage to create narratives that never happened. A video of me crying after falling off my bike became Rachel weeping in prayer after recognizing her sins. David practicing violin scales became our son channeling divine musical gifts. Emma's tantrum over vegetables was edited into spiritual warfare in our very home. The donation checks arrived by the handful. The foundation grew. We moved to a bigger house with a pool for baptism ceremonies. They told supporters, though I only ever saw them floating on rafts with margaritas. I started noticing discrepancies when I was 15. The foundation claimed to have helped 300 military families that year, but I'd seen maybe a dozen come through our doors. They reported building a retreat center for wounded veterans. It was actually a rental cabin they'd bought in the Smoky Mountains for our vacations. When I asked about it, my father grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave marks. "This family runs on trust. Rachel, don't become a weak link." So I kept quiet and started planning. Every forced testimony, every staged prayer circle, every manipulated video I endured, it knowing that in 3 years, I could disappear into the army and become someone they couldn't edit. Basic training was freedom. Drill sergeants screaming in my face felt like whispers compared to my mother's psychological operations. I excelled at everything marksmanship, physical training, tactical exercises. More importantly, I discovered I had a gift for flying. Flight school at Fort Rucker was where I became myself. No cameras, no scripts, just me and the aircraft. My instructor, Chief Warrant Officer Martinez, saw something in me during night navigation training. "Callaway," he said after I'd successfully completed a blackout landing in terrible weather, "you fly like the darkness is your friend." Nightbird stuck from that moment on. My medevac unit deployed to places I still can't name. I flew into hot zones where the only light came from muzzle flashes and burning vehicles. I pulled out wounded soldiers while taking fire, navigating by instinct and instrument when everyone else was grounded. 3 bronze stars, an air medal with valor, and a purple heart from the shrapnel still embedded in my left shoulder, all real, all earned, most of it classified. But here's what killed me. I couldn't talk about any of it publicly. The units I'd supported, the operations I'd been part of, they came with NDAs thick as phone books. When I left the Army and started my civilian medical flight company, I had to sanitize my history. No unit patches on my website, no war stories at industry conferences, no specifics that could compromise ongoing operations. My official record showed helicopter pilot, medical evacuation, various deployments. That's it. The meat of my service, the midnight extractions. The times I'd flown damaged birds back on pure adrenaline and prayer. The lives saved under impossible conditions, all locked behind classification stamps. 2 years ago, when Arcadia Aeromedical was bidding for the SRD contract, my parents reached out. They'd tracked me down through veterans networks, learned about my company. They wanted to reconcile, to feature my military service on their show as a redemption story, the prodigal daughter who'd found her way back to family values. I met them once, at a coffee shop near the airport. They'd brought cameras. Just think, my mother said, reaching for my hand while my father filmed on his phone. Your story could inspire thousands. The foundation could expand its veteran programs with your expertise. What veteran programs? I asked. They exchanged glances. My father lowered his phone. Don't be difficult, Rachel. This is bigger than your pride. I stood up to leave. My mother's mask finally slipped. You always were ungrateful. We made you who you are. No, I said. You made Rachel Whitaker. I made Ray Calloway. Now they were coming to unmake her, right in front of the people who mattered most, my peers, my community, the military family I'd chosen over them. The text came at 11:43 p.m. while I was reviewing maintenance logs in my hangar office. Nightbird, we need to talk. Urgent. Pia. Master Sergeant Pia Morales didn't use the word urgent lightly. 20 minutes later, she walked into my office carrying a tablet and wearing civilian clothes jeans and an old Army aviation t-shirt that had seen better days. Even out of uniform, she moved with the controlled precision of someone who'd spent 15 years keeping helicopters from falling out of the sky. Your parents are making moves, she said without preamble, setting the tablet on my desk. Guardian Patriots Forum is lighting up. They're promising a major stolen valor exposure at Family Day. 3 guess who they're targeting. I scrolled through the posts. Anonymous accounts were building a narrative mysterious female pilot. Claims military service but no public records. Runs a medical company with suspicious government contracts. They'd even posted a blurry photo of me from a trade show. Circle drawn around my face in red. How'd you find this? I keep tabs on those idiots ever since they went after Martinez last year. Ray, they're organizing. Some of them are planning to attend Family Day specifically for this. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice immediately. Ms. Calloway, this is Janelle Price. I don't know if you remember me. You worked for my parents' foundation, bookkeeping. A pause. I need to meet with you. Tonight if possible. I have documents you need to see. An hour later, we sat in a 24-hour diner off base. Janelle looked older, worn down, but her eyes were sharp as she pulled a flash drive from her purse. I kept copies of everything, she said. Every transaction, every fake invoice, every shell company transfer. Your parents fired me when I started asking questions, but not before I documented it all. Why come to me now? Because they're about to destroy you, and you're the only one who might actually stop them. They've been bleeding that foundation dry for years. Shoreline Media LLC, that's your father's production company, supposedly for making promotional videos. They've paid it over $3 million in the last 5 years. Want to guess how many videos they actually produced? 0, 3, total production cost maybe $10,000. The rest went to their mortgage, their cars, their vacations. There's more speaker fees for events that never happened, construction costs for facilities that don't exist, salaries for employees who were never hired. I studied the documents on her tablet. It was all their bank statements, forged contracts, even emails between my parents discussing how to hide transfers. This is enough for federal charges, I said. Only if someone with standing files a complaint. I tried 2 years ago. They buried it with lawyers and threats. But if this goes public, really public, with media pressure. She trailed off, then reached into her bag again. There's one more thing, a video file. Your brother David sent it to me before he cut contact with them completely. The video was grainy, shot on a phone from behind a partially opened door. My parents sat at their kitchen table, laptops open, discussing how to manufacture controversy around my military service. "She can't defend herself without violating those NDAs," my father said. "We paint her as a tour guide with delusions of grandeur. The Guardian Patriots amplify it, and she either backs down or loses her security clearance trying to fight back." "What about her actual service record?" my mother asked. "Sealed tight enough. Besides, who's going to believe a woman flew combat missions nobody can verify?" My hands were shaking. Pia reached over and paused the video. "We're building you a war chest," she said. "Not weapons truth." Over the next 3 days, we assembled our team. Noah Ridley, an investigative reporter from the local news who'd been sniffing around the Guardian Patriots for months. Ari Kaplan, a JAG reserve officer turned civilian attorney who specialized in defamation and fraud cases. 2 other veterans from my old unit who could verify what they were legally allowed to discuss. We met in the back room of Pia's motorcycle shop, laptops and documents spread across a workbench normally used for rebuilding engines. "Here's the plan," Ari said, pulling up a timeline on his laptop. "We create a dead man's switch. Everything gets packaged documents, video, affidavits, the works. Noah embargoes it with his editor, ready to publish the moment they attack you publicly. We also file sealed complaints with the state attorney general and the IRS, dated and time-stamped before Family Day." "What about the base?" Pia asked. "We can't have this circus disrupting a military installation." "We don't do anything on base except respond to what they start," I said. "Every action happens through civilian channels. I won't compromise base security or involve active duty personnel beyond what's necessary." Noah looked up from his notes. "I've got web domains registered thewhitakerfiles.com, plus mirrors. My tech guy is building a simple site, just documents and videos. No editorializing, clean, searchable, undeniable." "They'll claim it's revenge," Ari warned. "A bitter daughter trying to destroy her parents." "Let them," I said. "The documents speak for themselves. Besides, they're the ones choosing this battlefield. I'm just making sure it's a fair fight." So, Janelle had been quiet, organizing papers in the corner. Now she looked up. "There's something else you should know. Last week, they withdrew nearly $800,000 from the foundation account. Moved it offshore. They're planning to run if this goes bad." "Then we make sure it happens fast," I said. "Too fast for them to disappear." Pia cracked her knuckles. "Roger that. Nightbird, time to return fire." The conference room at Raven Ridge Army Airfield smelled like burnt coffee and industrial floor wax. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of government building pale that made everyone look slightly ill. Photos of Apache and Blackhawk squadrons lined the walls, stern-faced pilots staring down at the gathering crowd. I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a seat in the middle row where I could see both the presentation screen and the exits. My parents hadn't shown yet, but their equipment was already set up: a laptop connected to the projector, a portable speaker system, even a small tripod with a camera to record their triumph. The public affairs officer, Captain Torres, looked uncomfortable as more people filed in. This was supposed to be a simple family engagement event, not whatever circus my parents had planned. He caught my eye and nodded. We'd flown together years ago when he was still a warrant officer. "Didn't expect to see you here, Calloway," he said, approaching my seat. "Thought you were done with the dog and pony shows." "Special invitation from family," I said. "Couldn't refuse." He glanced at the elaborate setup. "Your folks—" Unfortunately, before he could respond, the doors opened and my parents entered like they were walking onto a talk show set. My mother wore a conservative blue dress with an American flag pin positioned precisely over her heart. My father had dressed in what I call stolen valor casual khakis and a polo shirt with a military-adjacent logo, not quite claiming service but implying it heavily. They worked the room immediately, shaking hands, taking selfies with confused attendees. My mother's laugh rang out, that practiced sound that had charmed donations from thousands of pockets. Several Guardian Patriot supporters were clearly in attendance. identifiable by their matching t-shirts with slogans about defending truth. "Is that little Rachel?" My mother's voice carried across the room as she finally noticed me. "Oh, I'm sorry you go by Ray now, don't you, sweetheart?" Every head turned. I stood slowly, maintaining eye contact. "Ms. Whitaker," I said, deliberately formal. "Mr. Whitaker." My father chuckled, playing to the audience. "So formal with your own parents. That's what military service does, I suppose, or what some people call military service." The temperature in the room shifted. Several actual veterans straightened in their seats. Captain Torres stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin. The Whitakers have requested time to share their perspective on family and service." "On truth and service," my mother corrected, moving to the podium. "You see, integrity is the foundation of military values, isn't it? And sometimes, the hardest truths to tell are about our own family." She clicked a remote, and the projector displayed the title slide, "The Truth About Our Daughter, A Lesson in Stolen Valor." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone in a Guardian Patriots shirt started recording on their phone. "Our daughter Rachel, sorry. Ray claims to be a decorated combat pilot," my father said, taking the microphone. "She runs a medical flight company with mysterious government contracts, but when we, her own parents, asked for details about her service, she couldn't provide them, wouldn't even tell us her unit or deployment locations." "Because they're classified," someone muttered from the back. My father ignored them. My mother clicked to the next slide, a photo of me at my company's hangar, strategically cropped to exclude any identifying information. "She claims to have a call sign." My mother continued. "All real pilots have call signs, don't they? Something earned through service, through brotherhood, sisterhood." She turned to me with practiced concern. "What was yours again, sweetheart?" The room went silent. This was the trap claim, something I couldn't prove or admit I didn't have one and look like a fraud. I stood up, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Then, clear and steady, Nightbird. The reaction was immediate. A grizzled chief warrant officer in the front row turned completely around. Two younger pilots exchanged glances. Someone whispered, "Holy shit, that's Nightbird." My mother's smile flickered. This wasn't the response she'd expected. "Anyone can claim a call sign," she said quickly. "But where's the proof? Where are the photos, the unit patches, the ma'am?" The chief warrant officer interrupted, standing up. "I was at Fob Hammer in 2012. Nightbird pulled 3 of my guys out after our convoy got hit. Flew through an active firefight with half her tail rotor shot up. That proof enough for you?" The Guardian Patriots supporters shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't following the script. My father tried to regain control. "One anecdote doesn't—" "I've got another," called out a female sergeant from the back. 2014 Operation Mountain Storm. Can't say much about it, but Nightbird was our only air support for 72 hours straight. Flew missions nobody else would touch. "Still classified," Captain Torres asked me quietly. "Still classified," I confirmed. My mother's mask was slipping. These could be anyone's stories. "Where's the documentation?" "The official records." I pulled out my phone and accessed a single document I was authorized to share, a heavily redacted performance evaluation from my last deployment. I handed it to Captain Torres. "Most of it's blacked out," he announced to the room. "But I can confirm this is legitimate. Warrant Officer Rachel Calloway. Call sign Nightbird. The rest is, yeah, way above my clearance level." "This proves nothing," my father snapped, his TV-ready composure cracking. "She's hiding behind classification to avoid what I asked, finally speaking up. Compromising ongoing operations, revealing tactical information, violating the oath I took to protect classified information, even from family members who think they're entitled to it." The room was fully on my side now, but my parents weren't done. My mother clicked to another slide, financial records from my company. "Then explain these defense contracts," she demanded. "How does someone with such a mysterious service record get approved for Because the people who matter know exactly who I am and what I did, I said. The ones with actual clearance, not YouTube channels and podcast subscriptions. My mother's face flushed red, but she pressed forward, clicking to the next slide a crudely edited video compilation. Clips of me at civilian aviation conferences, snippets from local news coverage of Arcadia Aeromedical, all spliced together with ominous music. Look at her, my mother narrated over the video, playing the hero while real veterans struggle, using military connections for profit while hiding behind convenient classification. We've researched extensively no public records of combat medals, no unit histories mentioning Nightbird, nothing. The Guardian Patriot supporters were getting louder, emboldened. One stood up, pointing at me. "Show us your DD-214, prove your service." "Yeah," another shouted. Real heroes don't hide behind paperwork. My father seized the momentum. The Strategic Response Directorate contract she claims we've filed FOIA requests. Conveniently, everything is exempt from disclosure. How convenient for someone fabricating their record. He clicked again screenshots of my company's website, with red circles drawn around every vague reference to my military service. Notice how she never specifies anything, just various deployments and medical evacuation. Classic stolen valor tactics. And now she profits from it, charging the government-inflated rates for simple medical flights while real veterans can't even get proper health care. Captain Torres stepped forward, concern evident. "Mr. Whitaker, these are serious accusations, backed by serious evidence." My mother interrupted, pulling out a folder dramatically. "Whoa, we've compiled testimonies from concerned citizens, analysis from valor investigation groups, even questions raised by legitimate journalists about her suspiciously sparse service record." She started distributing printed packets to the audience. I recognized the format, the same propaganda packages they used to create for their foundation donors, all emotional manipulation and cherry-picked facts. "This is insane," the chief warrant officer said, refusing to take a packet. "I literally saw her in combat, multiple times." "Perhaps you're mistaken," my father suggested with practiced condescension. "Stress of combat, fog of war, or perhaps you're protecting a fellow soldier admirable, but misguided." The room was fracturing. The Guardian Patriot supporters were rallying, while the actual veterans looked increasingly angry. Two camps forming, exactly what my parents wanted chaos they could spin into victimhood later. My mother moved for the kill shot, clicking to a final slide a photograph of me from my teenage years, standing with them at one of their foundation events. "This is who Rachel really is," she announced. A troubled young woman who ran from her family responsibilities, invented a military persona to escape accountability, and now perpetuates that lie for profit. We tried to handle this privately, to spare her embarrassment, but when someone undermines the integrity of our armed forces— "Enough!" The voice came from the doorway. Colonel Harrison, base commander, entered with two other officers. His expression could have frozen jet fuel. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker, this presentation ends now." "Colonel," my father started, "we're exposing— You're creating a security incident on my installation." He turned to Captain Torres. "Clear the room, except for Ms. Calloway and her parents." The audience filed out slowly, Guardian Patriot supporters grumbling about cover-ups while veterans shot me sympathetic looks. Pia lingered at the door until I nodded that I was okay. When the room was empty except for us and the colonel's staff, Harrison turned to my parents. "I've just gotten off the phone with the SRD liaison office. They're extremely concerned about this. Performance. Ms. Calloway's clearance level and service record are not matters for public debate." "So you're protecting her too," my mother said, defiant. "How deep does this conspiracy—" "Ma'am," Harrison cut her off. "I'm protecting operational security. Your daughter flew missions that are still classified. Personnel she extracted are still in active service. Operations she supported are ongoing. Your little show here could have real-world consequences you clearly don't comprehend." He turned to me. "Calloway, I apologize for this circus." Your service record speaks for itself to those cleared to read it. Thank you, sir. My father wasn't done. This is exactly what we're talking about: hidden records. Secret missions nobody can verify. Mr. Whitaker, one of the other officers, a major from intelligence, spoke up. We've been monitoring Guardian Patriots chatter about this event. Your coordination with them, crossing state lines to potentially incite harassment of a veteran with security clearance that's approaching federal territory. My parents exchanged glances. This wasn't going how they'd planned. Furthermore, Harrison continued, we've received concerning information about your foundation's activities. Something about financial irregularities. The base legal office has been contacted by the state attorney general's office requesting cooperation. My mother's face went pale. How did... She stopped herself, but the damage was done. The admission hung in the air. I think it's time you left my base, Harrison said. Your presentation materials will be retained as evidence, and I'd strongly suggest you refrain from any further public statements about Ms. Calloway's service. You can't silence us, my father blustered. We have free speech rights. You do, Harrison agreed. And Ms. Calloway has the right to defend herself against defamation, including, I'm told, with some interesting documents of her own. Both my parents turned to stare at me. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, my heart was pounding. The trap was set. All they had to do was keep pushing. This isn't over, my mother hissed at me. We'll go live on every platform. Everyone will know what you really are. I pulled out my phone, typed 4 words to Noah. They went public. Ready. Then I looked my parents in the eye. You're right. This isn't over. But you might want to check your phones. The moment I hit send, I watched Noah's response pop up almost instantly. Embargo lifted, publishing in 30 seconds. My mother was still ranting at Colonel Harrison about conspiracies and cover-ups when her phone buzzed. Then my father's. Then both again, insistently. What the? My father pulled out his phone, and I watched the color drain from his face. The first notification was from their biggest sponsor, Heartland Insurance Group, pending review of concerning allegations. All partnership agreements are suspended effective immediately. The second was a news alert, Breaking Evergreen Family Foundation under investigation for financial fraud documents show massive misappropriation. My mother's hands shook as she scrolled through her phone. This is... How did... The documents are comprehensive, I said calmly. Every falsified invoice, every shell company transfer, every dollar diverted from veteran families to your personal accounts. Janelle kept impeccable records. That bitch, my mother snarled, dropping all pretense of righteousness. We'll sue her for what? Telling the truth. I pulled up the Whitaker files, on my phone, and showed them the screen. It's all there. Bank statements showing $800,000 transferred to a Cayman Islands account last week, contracts for speaking engagements that never happened, building permits for facilities that were never built. My father lunged for my phone, but Colonel Harrison stepped between us. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step back. The major from intelligence was on his phone, speaking quietly but urgently. Captain Torres was documenting everything on his tablet. The room felt like it was closing in on my parents. The video is particularly damning, I continued, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. You know, the one where you're discussing how to destroy my military reputation because you knew I couldn't defend myself without violating classification. My mother's phone rang their lawyer. She answered on speaker without thinking. Margot, what the hell have you done? I've got reporters calling. The IRS just contacted me, and the state AG's office is preparing charges. They have everything. How did they get internal documents? Call you back, she whispered, ending the call. The notifications kept coming. Their podcast network dropped them. 3 more major sponsors pulled out. The Guardian Patriots Forum, their supposed allies, was turning on them, with members posting about feeling deceived, demanding to know if they'd been used to attack a real veteran. You planned this, my father said, his TV-perfect voice cracking. You set us up. No, I corrected. You set yourselves up. I just made sure there was a net waiting when you jumped. My phone buzzed with a text from Pia. Local news van just pulled up outside. They want a statement from the Whitakers. Then another from Noah. 300,000 views in 5 minutes. Stories going national. Colonel Harrison's phone rang. He listened briefly, then looked at my parents. That was base security. There are news crews at all 3 gates requesting access. We're denying them entry, but they're set up right outside. We need to leave, my mother said to my father, panic replacing her earlier arrogance. Now. You're free to go, Harrison said, though I should mention, there's only one road off base, and it passes all 3 gates. My father turned to me, and for the first time in my life, I saw real fear in his eyes. Rachel, you can't do this. We're your parents. No, I said. Parents protect their children. You tried to destroy me for podcast ratings and donation money. Everything we built, my mother started. Built on lies, I interrupted. Built on the backs of veterans you claimed to help while stealing their donations. Built on manipulating your own children into props for your con game. Another buzz this time, a forwarded message from Janelle. State AG confirms they've frozen all Evergreen accounts pending investigation. Criminal charges expected within 48 hours. My mother's legs seemed to give out. She sank into a chair, her perfectly styled hair falling across her face. The foundation. Our house. Everything's in the foundation's name. Fraud tends to complicate asset ownership, I observed. The major stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker, we've arranged for security to escort you to your vehicle and off base. I'd strongly advise you not to stop for the media. As security officers arrived to escort them out, my father made one last attempt at manipulation. You've destroyed your own family, he said. How does that honor your military values? My family is the soldiers who bled beside me, I replied. The crew chiefs who kept my bird flying, the medics who saved lives in the back of my helicopter, the veterans your foundation stole from. That's my family. You two. You're just people I used to know. My mother stood up, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. We'll remember this betrayal. Rachel. It's Ray, I said. And this isn't betrayal. It's accountability. As security led them toward the door, my mother turned back one last time. That money in the Caymans will disappear. Start over. You'll never find us. I held up my phone, showing her another screen. The SEC and FBI were notified an hour ago about the international transfer. They are very interested in that particular account. Oh, and Homeland Security has already flagged your passports. The last sound I heard from them was my father cursing as they were escorted down the hallway. Colonel Harrison waited until they were gone, then turned to me. Hell of an operation. Calloway? Thank you, sir. The intel major smiled slightly. Nightbird, right, I've heard stories. Didn't know you were dealing with this kind of hostile fire on the home front. Everyone's got their battles. Sir, Torres looked up from his tablet. Their video presentation was live streaming to their podcast audience. The comments are, not favorable to them. Lots of veterans pointing out the obvious classification issues, calling them out for attacking their own daughter. My phone lit up with messages. Pia, Noah, Ari, other veterans who'd figured out what happened. But one stood out. From my brother David. Saw the news. About time. Proud of you. Sis. The outdoor stage at Family Day had been meant for a band performance, but now it served as ground zero for my parents' complete unraveling. Colonel Harrison had tried to contain the situation in the conference room, but my parents, in their desperation, had rushed to the main event area where hundreds of military families were enjoying barbecue and carnival games. They'd commandeered the microphone from a startled DJ, and my mother's voice now echoed across the festival grounds. Everyone needs to know the truth about Rachel Calloway. She shrieked into the mic, her careful composure completely shattered. She's a fraud who... The feedback squeal cut her off as my father grabbed a second microphone. Behind them, A massive screen meant for movie night started flickering. They'd somehow connected their laptop, trying to display their presentation to the entire crowd. I stood at the edge of the gathering crowd, Pia beside me. "Should we stop them?" she asked. "No," I said, pulling out my phone. "Let them finish destroying themselves." The screen blazed to life with the truth about our daughter in blood-red letters. But almost immediately, phones throughout the crowd started pinging, buzzing, chiming, hundreds of them, all at once. What the staff sergeant next to me looked at his phone? Holy shit! Evergreen Family Foundation fraud exposed. Is this real? The story was everywhere. Noah had coordinated with 3 other news outlets, and they'd all published simultaneously. Social media exploded. The Guardian Patriots Forum was in chaos. Members posting screenshots of donations they'd made to the foundation, demanding refunds, calling for investigations. My mother was still trying to speak over the growing murmur of the crowd. She claims to be this Nightbird person, but where's the proof we're her parents? We would know if— "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the microphone." A military police officer approached the stage, but my father blocked him. "We have a right to speak. This is America free speech." The crowd was reading their phones now, not listening to my parents, but reading about them. I heard fragments of conversation. Diverted $800,000 to offshore accounts. Fake veteran charity stealing from real military families. Their own daughter is a decorated pilot and they're attacking her. Someone in the crowd shouted, "You stole from veterans." My mother spun toward the voice. "That's a lie. We've helped hundreds of families." "Then where are they?" Another voice called out, "Name one family you've helped." The screen behind them flickered. My father was trying to advance his presentation, but instead of their prepared slides, error messages kept popping up. Their laptop was being bombarded with push notifications as every platform they were on exploded with the scandal. Then Janelle walked onto the stage. I hadn't expected this, hadn't planned it. She must have been waiting in the crowd. She carried a banker's box and set it down with a thud that echoed through the speaker system. "I worked for these people for 3 years," she said, taking the mic from my stunned father. "I watched them steal from every person who trusted them. These are copies of the real books." She pulled out a ledger, holding it up. January 15th, 20,000 donated for a Wounded Warriors home modification. Same day, 20,000 transferred to Shoreline Media for promotional services. The Warrior never got a dime. "You signed an NDA," my mother screeched, lunging for the box. An MP caught her arm. "Which became void when you committed felony fraud," Janelle replied calmly. She pulled out another document. March 3rd, 50,000 raised at a charity golf tournament for PTSD treatment programs. March 5th, 50,000 paid to a shell company in Delaware owned by Daniel Whitaker. The crowd was turning ugly. These were military families who'd seen brothers, sisters, spouses come home broken, who'd probably donated to charities just like Evergreen. The betrayal was personal. A news crew had somehow gotten onto base, probably credentialed for Family Day coverage, and they were filming everything. My parents were being destroyed on live television, and they'd done it to themselves. My phone buzzed. "Noah, just got word. State AG is holding emergency press conference in 10 minutes. Criminal charges being filed." I held up my phone, displaying a QR code I'd prepared. "Anyone who wants to see the evidence. It's all public now." I called out, "Every document, every receipt, every proof of their fraud." Phones turned toward me, scanning the code. The website traffic counter on my phone climbed 500, 1,000, 3,000 views. "You ungrateful." My mother broke free from the MP and charged toward me, but stopped short when she saw who stood behind me. A line of veterans had formed, men and women I'd served with, some I'd never met, but who knew my story. The chief warrant officer from earlier stood front and center. "Nightbird saved my life," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Flew through hell to get me out when I was bleeding out in the desert. And you're attacking her for not bragging about classified missions. I was in her unit," another voice called out. A woman I recognized from Fort Campbell. Watched her fly 18 hours straight during Operation Mountain Storm. Never complained, never stopped, just kept saving lives. More voices joined in. She pulled my squad out when we were pinned down, flew my wounded translator to safety after our convoy hit an IED, took shrapnel to save a full medical team. Each testimony was another nail in my parents' coffin. The crowd wasn't just reading about their fraud, now they were seeing who they'd tried to destroy. My father grabbed the microphone one last time. Desperate. These are all lies. Paid actors. We have evidence. No, I said, my voice carrying without a microphone. You have desperation. You have greed. And now, you have consequences. A black SUV pulled up beside the stage federal plates. 2 agents in suits stepped out, their badges visible. FBI. Margot and Daniel Whitaker. One called out. My mother's face went white. She grabbed my father's arm, and for a moment, I thought they might run. But where would they go? They were on a military base, surrounded by soldiers and military police, with federal agents approaching. Turn around, my mother hissed at the person still filming. Turn the camera off. But it was too late. Everything was already live. Their destruction was being broadcast, shared, downloaded, saved. The story they'd tried to tell about me had become the story of their own unmasking. As the FBI agents climbed the steps to the stage, my father looked at me one last time. You planned all of this. No, I said. I just stopped protecting you from yourselves. The last thing I heard before the agents read them their rights was my mother's wail. We were trying to save the family legacy. You did, I replied, though she was too far away to hear. This is your legacy now. The FBI agents were efficient, professional. They read my parents their rights while the crowd watched in stunned silence. My mother had stopped screaming, her face blank with shock as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. My father kept muttering about lawyers, about constitutional rights, about persecution, but his words fell on deaf ears. Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud across state lines. The lead agent stated clearly, You have the right to remain silent. As they were led toward the black SUV, someone from the state attorney general's office stepped onto the stage, a woman in a navy suit who'd apparently been waiting for this moment. Folks, I'm Deputy Attorney General Sarah Chen from the Fraud Division. We've been investigating the Evergreen Family Foundation for 6 months based on whistleblower testimony. Today's events have accelerated our timeline. Anyone who donated to this organization should file a claim at our website. We'll be working to recover as much of the stolen funds as possible. The crowd erupted in questions, phones held high to record her response, but I was already walking away. This wasn't my show anymore, it was justice taking its course. Captain Torres caught up with me near the helicopter display area, away from the chaos. Calloway, the base commander wants to apologize again for— No need, I said, watching a Black Hawk on the horizon. They chose the battlefield. I just made sure it was witnessed. Pia appeared with a beer. Somehow she'd managed to grab 2 from the Family Day tent. To Operation Nightbird's Revenge, she said, clinking her bottle against mine. To the truth, I corrected. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Texts from veterans I'd served with, from employees at my company, from people I hadn't heard from in years. But one message stood out from the SRD liaison office. Security clearance intact, contract approved for renewal, outstanding work defending your integrity. Noah jogged over, his phone in hand. The story's gone national. CNN just picked it up. The Whitaker Files website has had 2 million hits, and get this, 3 other fake veteran charities are being investigated because of attention from this case. Good, I said simply. Behind us, the Family Day festivities were slowly resuming. Parents corralled children back to face painting booths. The band that was supposed to play took the stage, starting their sound check. Life moving on, the way it always does after explosions. The base commander, Colonel Harrison, approached our small group. Calloway, I've been on the phone with some folks at the Pentagon. They're impressed with how you handled this. Took a lot of restraint not to reveal classified information even under that kind of pressure. I took an oath, sir. That didn't end when I became a civilian. He nodded approvingly. The footage from today is being reviewed for training purposes how to handle public attacks on service members' credibility. You turned their ambush into a case study. Just used their own tactics against them. Sir, they taught me young that the truth is flexible if you control the narrative. So I made sure I controlled it. As the sun started setting over the base, painting the helicopters in golden light, Janelle found me. She looked lighter somehow, like testifying had lifted years off her shoulders. "Thank you," she said, "for giving me the courage to finally speak up." "You always had the courage. You just needed the right moment." She handed me a flash drive. "Everything's on here. Every document, every email, every recording I made. The FBI has copies, but I wanted you to have it too, in case they try anything from prison." I pocketed it. "They won't. They're finished." The news crew that had been filming approached. Reporter in tow. "Ms. Calloway, can we get a statement?" I looked at the camera, then at the base around me, this place that represented everything I'd fought to protect, everything my parents had tried to tear down. My parents built an empire on stolen valor, not mine, but that of every veteran they claimed to help while robbing them blind. They thought my silence about classified operations made me vulnerable. They were wrong. My silence was duty. Their silence was guilt. Today, both silences ended. "Will you press additional charges for defamation?" "No. The federal charges are enough. I got what I wanted, the truth exposed, and justice for the veterans they defrauded." The reporter pressed on. "Any message for other military members facing similar attacks on their credibility?" I thought for a moment. "Document everything, trust your battle buddies, and remember, you don't owe your story to anyone who'd use it against you. Your service record stands on its own merit, whether people can see it or not." As the reporter wrapped up, I walked toward the base gates. The MPs nodded as I passed. Word had spread about what happened. Outside, the last news van was packing up. The story would continue in courtrooms and headlines, but my part was done. I reached my truck just as my phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the area code Leavenworth, where the federal prison was located. "This isn't over, Mom." I deleted it without responding and started my engine. Through the rearview mirror, I could see the base receding, the helicopters on the flight line catching the last rays of sunlight. Tomorrow I'd be back to flying medical missions, saving lives, doing the work that actually mattered. The radio came on. Local news already covering the arrest. "Breaking news tonight. The founders of a prominent veteran charity have been arrested on federal fraud charges after their own daughter, a decorated Army pilot, exposed years of financial crimes." I turned it off. I didn't need to hear the rest. I'd lived it. As I drove past the spot where they'd been arrested just hours earlier, I saw something that made me smile. A maintenance crew was already taking down the Whitaker guest speaker sign they'd put up that morning. By tomorrow, it would be like they'd never been there at all. The road stretched ahead, leading away from the base and back to my hangar, my helicopters, my real life. In my pocket, my phone stayed silent. No more threatening messages, no more attempts at manipulation. For the first time in years, I was truly free of them. The parents who'd tried to destroy me for ratings and donations were heading to federal prison. The veterans they'd stolen from would get justice, and I'd keep flying, keep serving, keep living the life I'd built in spite of them. As I passed through the last yellow-painted gate marking the base perimeter, the smell of jet fuel carried on the evening breeze, the smell of purpose, of mission, of home. My name is Ray Calloway, call sign Nightbird, and this is where my story continues, not ends. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Ray's position? Let me know in the comments.